Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Personality Yoda. This is I think the 13th Five Voices interview that we've been doing. So for those of you around the world who have been following the series, I hope you enjoy it. And today you're in for another treat. I don't know where Tracy finds all these amazing people from, but we are going to meet an amazing lady called Courtney Jordan, who's going to be representing the creative connector nurturer voice. So Courtney, can I welcome you officially to Personality Yoda? Thank you for agreeing to be my 13th. Obviously not unlucky for me, rather than unlucky for you, I hope. But there we go. How are you, Courtney, today?
I am great. I am excited to be lucky number 13. I think that bodes well for today.
That's what I love about Americans. You're always so positive. Everything is a positive to be maximized or optimized. So it's just so different from our cynical Brits over here that are complaining that it's raining again and that we're still in lockdown. So anyway, Courtney, tell everyone a little bit about you. I always try and get guests to give a bit of context for where you grew up, what life was like, what you did for fun. Give us a little bit of the kind of background to the Courtney Jordan story.
Certainly. So I am a native Virginian. You'll see some lovely pictures behind me. I grew up outside of DC and attended the University of Virginia. I have an older sister and a younger brother, so I'm a middle child. I didn't know how typical middle child I was until recently. But I grew up always being active, playing sports. I played soccer, tennis, and basketball. Loved, again, sports so much that my nickname is Sportney. My friends call me that. And I believe, Steve, sometimes you even call me that. And I don't know, it was basic Northern Virginia suburb life outside of DC. I spent a lot of time on the West Coast with my mom's family, being active, again, just doing stuff like that. So I've been back in Northern Virginia for, about 17 years. I have a background in real estate. I became a realtor in 2004 and still have a license and hang out with my family. I've got nieces and one nephew. He is the prince, and he knows it. He is cute, and he is the only boy in the family. He can get away with murder. So Aunt Coco loves him. He's 4 and precious. So the others are okay too.
That's so good. I'll always remember I came and visited you, didn't I, or Susan's well in DC, and I got taken to a cornhole tournament, which for a Brit was only to realize that you were outstanding at that as well. So, truly, this girl is Sportney. She literally plays everything. And and it's so cool. It even took me, I think, to a wine tasting kind of farm. I'm like, that's amazing. My perfect sort of break. So, yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Courtney. You cover everything. So I guess the second question people ask people is to go, so how did a sport-loving realtor from Virginia, or Northern Virginia, sorry, end up getting connected with Giant, first of all, and then we'll do a little bit on how did you discovering your voice order actually make a difference to you? So tell us a little bit about the Giant connection, first of all, and then we'll put up a little screen and we'll let you walk through the circles of influence for your kind of how did the voices impact the different parts of your life?
Certainly. So, it was about 2014. And part of my story that I didn't share earlier was that I am divorced. And it's 2014, I was going through the middle of the divorce. You all were just kind of starting X-Core, figuring out what Giant was going to be. And one of my good friends, Susan Cumbus, was one of your instructors. And she said, hey, why don't you come to Atlanta and see what we do? And I said, okay, yeah, would love to. And I actually met a bunch of Giants then. Nobody remembers meeting me there because I was so mad.
Did I meet you?
You did. You did.
Don't be offended. I barely remember my children's names, so I know for you it's probably really good. So I apologize unreservedly for my lack of relational skills. Anyway, keep going.
You all were busy actually doing your job, and so I fell in love with what you guys were doing. But it just wasn't the right time. Again, like I said, I was in the middle of a divorce. I was super bored in real estate. And at that time, I was still selling about $15 million of real estate by myself and staying busy. Fast forward a few years later, and I was bored and I hated my life. I was burnt out. $15 million of real estate by yourself can be a challenge. And when I say by myself, it's because I really believe no one else could do it as good as I was going to do it. Nobody was going to care about my clients the way that I cared about them. And I now know that that's kind of like my nature is I get a little mama bear, like they're my people. And if you mess up, then that's on me, So it was a bit of a pride ego thing for me to not relinquish that. So in spring of 2017, you came into town for a corporate pitch, and we were having dinner, and it was you, Mike Opedal, and Maria Guy. And Mike Opedal cheers and said to maybe Courtney working with us one day. And I said, yes. And you did your thing.
I think you better clarify that for the audience around the world that think I'm now some kind of predator.
Right? No, you started digging into my head and realized that money was not my motivation. So doing real estate was nice, but it was not truly life-giving for me. I found a way to make real estate life-giving by caring for my clients and making sure that they have the best experience. And it was interesting because I was there with my good friend Susan, and she was talking to you saying, hey, this is she's a thinker. And you said, well, what's her best fit? And you said, oh, Susan thought I was a pioneer. Definitely. Pioneer connector is what she thought. And I believe you thought that initially. And I'm over there going, no, I don't think I am. I've been on a journey, and next thing you know, I'm in London doing an intensive with you, and I am in fact a creative connector pioneer. And so that was my introduction to Giant. Yeah,
or even a creative connector nurturer. Because the difference between the pioneer is the INFJ, you're the INFP, Courtney. So forgive me, but otherwise someone's going to read this interview and go like, no, I've been dumped. A guardian will be writing to complain that they've not got what they paid for. So, okay, so you're in London. We're doing a life intensive, which I won't bore everyone with now, but is a pretty fun thing of going, I just go, who are you really underneath it all? Who's the real you that actually maybe people don't always see? And what do you want to do with your life? So talk to us a little bit through circles of influence. So for you, discovering that despite your best friends telling you, we think we know who you are, that actually this process actually allowed you hopefully to get the confidence to go, no, this is truly who I am. Talk to us a little bit, take a bit of time, go, what were some of the key self breakthroughs for you? Where have you seen this applied? I know you've talked to me about your mum. Where in teams, where's organization? Just take a little bit of a riff for us and walk us through the circles of influence where that voices aha moments rippled through kind of the sporty world.
Yeah, so I'll start with self. And I think that this is really, it was super liberating for me to push back on my best friends and say, nope, that's not who I am. I know that this is who I am. You keep thinking this, but I've learned to do that. And I think when I think about, I had a great childhood. My parents are thankfully still married and they're wonderful. I was daddy's girl from a very early age. And that's part of why I developed a love of sports. I joke that I was his little boy until my brother came along. And so I grew up watching football with him and I loved it. It wasn't because I, felt I had to. I actually really enjoyed that. And that was a special time. And my dad is very logical, one of the smartest men I know. And I developed a very, very good sense of be rational, be logical, and that was a subconscious thing. And not a bad trait. I am very thankful for that now, knowing what I know about a creative. But when I also think back to who I was as a child, I was always running around outside. I was creating worlds in the background and in my backyard. I had paths and forts and, stories of make believe that I, was building in my mind. And so that was who I was. But then I was also pay attention to the details, Courtney. Why are you doing that? What is that making sense, right? And then as I grew older, my generation, I really kind of started to feel this pressure, the shoulds, as you will, right? It's the oughts and the shoulds. And that in order to be successful as a female, I needed to show up as being assertive and being driven. And I am driven. But what I realized was that I was successful at sports because I had some athletic ability, not because I had to win. But the sports that I was good at were actually more individual. Tennis, I really, really loved. Soccer, I liked, but I wasn't quite as good. And so all of these things kind of ended up making me come off as being a pioneer connector. And people experience me that way. And so in the middle of my divorce, I realized, that's not who I am. And I had several kind of hurt along the way where, I was told it's not okay to be vulnerable. And, and in not so many words. And my biggest fear is crying in public. I don't know what it is, but being, okay, no, I have to be strong, right? I have to be strong. And as I got to know voices and as I spent time with you in London, I thought, well, two pioneers can go at it and spar. And I'm pretty good at the sparring. I can be quick. I can be, I can present as being a very tough girl. And what I would do is walk away going, oh my gosh, that hurt so bad. And then are they hurt? Do I need to apologize? Is that, and as you know, that is not something that somebody who is a pioneer naturally goes towards.
That's so good, Courtney. Let me just share a tool here, because in some ways, for what you're describing is so helpful for others who listen, that in some ways, when you listen to Courtney, and we'll come on in a moment to voices particularly, but in the end, it's really easy. We always say that the way you show up on TV, what people see and experience, your external behaviors, is made up of a complex mix of your nature, your nurture, and choice. So nature is your DNA. It's your personality. You're born with it. Nurture are the external environmental influences which have shaped you with lots of oughts and shoulds. And then choice are the things that you actually choose to do. And again, you'll find that ultimately nurture will always trump nature in early life in the behaviors. So Courtney is a classic example of a father who wants a sporty son. The nurture, so Courtney goes, well, I want to be affirmed and loved by the authority figures, so therefore I'll play like this. And then somebody else says you need to be logical and rational and don't be vulnerable. So that nurture then reinforced with choice means that what you have is a behavior that looks obviously like a pioneer connector, but fundamentally we're not actually dealing with nature. So it's often quite a liberating moment for people when they go, it's not a bad thing. It actually means you've developed, Courtney, other hands as well. But it's incredibly liberating usually to be able to go, no, actually the way I've been showing up on TV actually is not really me, or at least it's not all of me. And I'd much rather be much more effective. And in the 70-30 we talk about, when I get to behave and live in the way that I was made to be. So talk us through maybe a little bit of the lens. So for voices, Courtney, you go, I'm a creative. I'm not a pioneer. I'm an introvert. I don't have to be always out there. Talk us a little bit of some of that kind of voice ahas for you.
Yeah, I think that's, it was a huge aha as far as I am an introvert. Nobody believes it, but I was very much raised to be an extrovert. And being in real estate, people assume that you're an extrovert. And I can spend all day with a client, and just one client all day. And I'd walk in my house and say, no more words. I'm done. No more words. I'm done. Need to recharge. I go on vacation by myself to the beach for 5 days. And it's great. And I can interact with people as much as I want. And I golf by myself, and I have friends who say, how can you do that? I said, it is fantastic. It is actually really recharging for me. And so that was a big aha, that it is fine for me to be alone. And I don't have to be around people. And it doesn't mean I'm being antisocial. It actually means that I am recharging, and they are going to get the best version of me. I'll never forget, Steve, on your winery visit, you said to me, I really like Pioneer Connector, Courtney, but I really, really like Creative Connector Nurturer, Courtney.
Oh,
and
wow.
I got to be myself. And that is, I don't have to be the center of attention or the performer, right? And again, it's not a bad thing, but nobody ever believed that I'm a creative connector nurturer when I first show up. And that is because that's my self-preservation. And so when I don't feel safe, that is something that a creative connector nurturer does, right? I'm looking for my tribe. I'm looking for safe people. And I'm going to look at you, and I need some time to feel you out. But I have realized that has been one of my quote unquote superpowers over the years, is to get that gut feeling. Are you safe? Can I be me? And I have grown back into being my creative connector nurturer self, where I get to be a little goofy. I get to be a little bit spacey, and people look at me like, wait a minute, you look like you've got it all together. I said, oh yeah, no, you should see what's going on in my head. And if they're lucky enough, sometimes I'll share that. And so that, those have been some tendencies that I've recognized. I've also, realized, oh, that's why I've had problems in the past with people looking at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Starting stories in the middle of the stream of thought, right? I'm 10 steps ahead, and I start at step 11, and then people look at me like, what are you talking about? Oh, right. You weren't on that journey with me in my head just now. So I have to go back and start again.
That's so good, so helpful. Any kind of family, or one more on that maybe? I think you said something about that it really impacted your relationship with your mum. Voices.
It did. So as I was going through my own self-discovery, I realized, I said, I think I'm a lot more like my mother than just looking like her. My dad has a saying, oh, she's just like me, but thank God she looks like her mom. And I do. I look almost exactly like my mother in facial structure, and grew up, again, working very closely with my dad. He was a realtor as well, so we were a team. And I started digging, and I'm like, no, I get mom. I do. And so there came a point in time where I realized I have been not letting my mother be her. And these are the things that I would like to have done for me. And so I decided that I would go to New York City with her. That's something she's always wanted to do. She loves to travel just like me. She doesn't get to do it as much as I do. But she had always wanted to go to New York City at Christmas. And I called my dad and I said, hey, I want to take mom for her birthday and Christmas to New York City. He's like, oh, good, please take her. He doesn't love to travel, right? And so I planned a trip, planned a couple of fun activities, but then left it very open, because that is the way that I like to travel. And I suspected that my mother was like me. And I let her pick what we would do. And I let her change her mind a million times, however many times. And there was a point when she said, thank you for letting me change my mind. And that was a little bit crushing to me, because I thought, oh my gosh, I have been frustrated in the past when she does change her mind. But that was actually a frustration with myself, because I have a problem with wanting to change my mind, with not wanting to be as decisive as I can be. And so that was a really fun trip. And it was I would say, liberating trip for both of us. And sure enough, I had her take the assessment, and she goes, I'm a creative connector nurturer. And I said, I know. And so it's been a great journey, just building that relationship with her again, as me. right? You said it. I decided that the world gets the best version of me when I am who I was created to be. And that doesn't mean that I don't pull out the pioneer connector every now and then, but the creative connector nurturer is me.
Thank you for being so real. I mean, there's so much in what you shared there. And, you know, the problem is when you work at a depth level with people, there are so many people who are trying to be the person that the authority figure. And for women, it's often their father who actually, without knowing it, and there's another series on parenting, but while we're here, we'll do it, is to go, you have to be, particularly the strong characters, sometimes the things we say over our kids often end up being things that they carry with them in a way that we didn't want to. So for you, Courtney, to be able to now own, this is who I am at my best. And therefore, you know, we often have a phrase in Giant which says, you can't give what you don't possess. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you had to become comfortable that it was okay to be a creative connector nurturer. And from that place, you were actually able to be a liberator to your mum as an example. I often say to people is the people we're the harshest on are the people who are like us, that appear to let our personality type down. So you'll find that kind of we're often, so therefore we see the imperfections in them and they remind us of the imperfections that we don't like seeing in ourselves. So it's a really wonderful moment. And I suspect, you know, if you think you're wired for depth and so's your mum, and almost being able to have that, she's probably wanted that for a very, very long time. So I imagine you've answered a lot of her heart's desires, even if she couldn't articulate them at the time. Yeah. Is anything on that that's connected?
Well, I would say that again, we get each other, right? Yeah. And I understand. And now our relationship is not me eye rolling like, oh, mom, stop, right? It's oh yeah, tell me more, right? And the things you nailed it. It's not that. Again, it's not that my dad, like, I love my dad. We still have a great relationship. And I am, as you said, I'm so thankful that he taught me to use my left hand, right? Yeah. As we say, in my brain, like taught me to use the other side of my thinking process. But just being able to have that relationship where it's okay to feel, it's okay to, you know, share that with her. And as you said, it is, I think that's something that she has wanted because I was her tough kid, right? I was the one who didn't need parents in many ways. I remember her looking at me and saying that when I was in high school, and I didn't understand this at the time, and now I understand it so much more. She said, "You were ready." She said, "I started letting go of you your sophomore year of high school." So, you know, most parents get really emotional when they're seniors, you know, it's time to go off to college. And she said, no, you were ready as a sophomore. You could have gone to college and you would have been fine. I'm like, you're right. I was kind of done with high school. And that was how I moved through the phases of life. So creating that relationship, getting to be a liberator for her. And even my relationship with my dad is probably better because I am me, right? I'm able to be even emotional and vulnerable there. And my relationships with my friends, although I showed up as the caregiver, right? The great cry, the creative connector nurture is, I want to help you and I want to help you reach your potential. And this is what I see. And oh my gosh, can we do it all right now? And and we're going to have a lot of fun while we're doing it. That has always kind of been my relationship with my friends. And so but they're still getting the better version of me. I mean, Susan still fights me a little bit on being a thinker versus a feeler, but I'm like, yeah, no, I'm a feeler. Trust me. I'll show you.
There's nothing worse than a pioneer that won't admit they're wrong. So Susan, if you're watching this, I hope this finally confirms once and for all that you were wrong. So that's good. Right. Courtney, we thank you for that. I think it's so helpful. People always appreciate the vulnerability and the realization that just because someone has the same voice order as you doesn't mean they look like you, sound like you. Nurture and choice mean that every individual is truly unique, but nobody gets to be at their best when they don't actually accept that this is how I show up at my best. And so many people live that life. So we often talk about, I know this will be a nightmare for you because obviously as a free spirit, you hate the idea. But if I was your boss, if I was kind of leading you, because a lot of the people who watch this have got, creative connector nurturers in their teams. They've got kids, they've got friends. So actually thinking through, if we put the tool up, Tracy, in a moment, is what does high support and high challenge look like when it's calibrated in a life-giving, liberating way for a creator connected nurturer. So give us some of your thoughts. As always, people will know, watch the series, I'll always add my little thoughts over and above and riff with you on it. But this is where it's almost like, what is it everyone needs to know about the creative connector nurturer so that we can actually lead them well, parent them well, befriend them well, but particularly maybe lead them well in a team environment?
Yeah, I think this has been very interesting for me to think through. I think, as soon as you said structure, I'm like, oh, structure, no structure, right? And it's funny because I've also been described as a free spirit engineer in many ways, right? I want to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, the way I want to do it, but I will get it done. And so when I think through what high support looks like, high support is really affirming your belief in me. That I am competent. And I think that's one of the reasons why I showed up so much as a pioneer connector, was because I feared not appearing to know what I was talking about. And I think that was what's going on in my head without even knowing it. And so affirming that I belong, affirming that I'm good at what I do, or that I could be good at what I do, asking permission has been a theme in my life. Do you think I'd be good at, I'm afraid of failure. So really affirming that I'm in the right position, that I'm good at what I do, really can bring out the best of me. Giving me space to dream. Now, some kind of structure can be good in that, because even I always say that there is freedom and discipline, which is I'm not super good at. I mean, I joke that I'm kind of like a bulldog. I can like sprint really hardcore, and then I'm like, wow, that was really exhausting living inside of some rules. But giving me deadlines, giving me solid, concrete, hey, I need you to deliver this by X date. And I often work best under pressure. So if you need it ahead of time, I would give me a deadline that was maybe a few days ahead of when you actually needed it. Just being honest here.
I love it.
That's how I work best. So I do like to think outside the box. And so oftentimes the ideas that I come up with may not make sense. So asking me a lot of questions as, okay, how did you get to that? Why did you do that? And I, again, will have spent hours thinking through what I've just said to you, but to actually draw out why I got there, that takes good questions. And so I would say that's what high support and high challenge looks like for me.
That's so good. That's really good, actually. And again, I think what you realize is when you listen to this section for the different voice orders, you actually realize how different people are. So for some of you to be told, I need a deadline, I need pressure to give them my best. Some of you are like, sounds horrendous. So a couple of the other things that I always say is, if I'm leading someone like you, I always recognize that with the creative connector nurturer, there is always a genius spark in them. There is always something in them that sometimes they don't necessarily, they need to feel safe. They need to feel that people believe in them in order to share something which often can be groundbreaking or transformational in the areas that they are keen in. So I'm always thinking, when I'm working with a INFP or a creative connector nurturer, 3 words get me, I go, what is the creative spark genius that is in this person that I can help, firstly, give them the confidence to articulate and own, but then what does it mean to actually help them live into that? Because the combination of that with the perfectionist tendency, which is, if I can't do it perfectly, I don't really want to do it, often means for a lot of the characters like you, Courtney, they never fully use the creative genius spark that is in them, because they either fear failure, they don't feel safe, or actually they end up trying to please someone who doesn't want them to take risks. Talk to me a little bit about that in terms of how that would manifest itself for you.
Oh man, I resemble those remarks. I am a perfectionist. I, as much as I hate being put in a box. That's another thing. Don't try to put a creative connector nurturer into a box. They'll look at you and go, "You're not the boss of me." But I don't want to fail, and that's that asking permission. And so being given as a boss that, like, if you were my boss, to say, "Hey, it's okay if it's not right," that would be hugely. I mean, in my head, I'm going, no, it's not. But if I have somebody reinforcing that, and so that does, it liberates me. When I was, so part of what I have done inside of Giant is create a program for realtors. And what I did was I had people ask me questions and, to draw it out. As you said, the genius spark. I said, it's clear in my head, it's not coming out directly. Can you just ask me questions? And then, I had some business partners, Leo and Carlos, who did say, they're like, wow, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And so the more that was reinforced, that didn't come out right the first time, but it really brought out that creative spark, as you said. And so getting over the fear of fear or not being perfect has been a challenge for me. But fortunately, I've had folks in my life who have called me up to say, you do have great ideas. You see things. What do you see? And so just the freedom there has been really fantastic as I've grown.
And I think the realization is what your creative connectors share first isn't usually what they mean.
Yes.
And actually, in the end, if you squash them, you end up, I would say, if you squash a creative connector, you end up with a nurturer. Because in the end, the fear of displeasing, the fear of letting others down, or the fear of failure causes them to become conservative. And therefore, the creative genius actually gets lost or buried. It's always there. So there always comes a moment in the lives of the creative connector where there is a moment where the right environment with the right people, and it's usually the right authority figure that creates the context where that can actually happen. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand, is it usually requires someone else to help you access the thing which is most genius inside you, because the whole world is telling you to be a particular thing. And you're very, very sensitive to, even though you've got the kind of the pioneer connector shell that you put on, there is still a very strong sensitivity to go, how do I make sure I get it right? How do I fit in? How do I make sure everyone's okay and I'm helping and I'm not causing trouble? So as a boss, what I'm doing is going, I'm naming what I see in you. I'm releasing you from the freedom of always having to be right, because in the end, I would always challenge for you and other people like you and go, you're defining failure the wrong way. So I always love the Thomas Edison kind of conversation about how he created the electric light bulb. He didn't see it as 999 or whatever it was failures. He saw it as an inevitable process of learning towards the release of that genius spark. So therefore, as a boss, what I'm saying is there are certain things, Courtney, you're going to have to deliver, okay? Because we can't be creative everywhere. And I'll help provide the structure. I'll agree deadlines with you, not impose them on you, which is another thing. But I want to create at least some space in your world where that creativity actually is able to have free reign, and where actually it's fine to experiment, it's fine to discover, to innovate, because you'll never usually find it first time. And that, I think, is the thing. The relational environment is always very important for you, because people have to believe in you, because you will be tempted to self-sabotage and not believe that you yourself can do things. And mix that with perfectionism, and you end up a default towards sometimes conservatism and safety rather than the frontier, innovation and experimentation.
Absolutely. And I think that just resonates a ton. That, when you said, when you squash a creative connector nurturer, you get a nurturer. and you stop dreaming. And that's where I was before I went on this Five Voices journey. I was caring for my clients. I was being very, very, like that's just what I did. But there was no freedom of creativity. And that's why I was bored. I wasn't energized. And those are the things when I started, getting to build a program out to, watch other people have those same ahas. That was truly the spot where I started living again. And, to be a 38-year-old in the middle of a career change, that was not awesome at the time to say, oh, wait, what am I doing with my life? But to finally not have to pretend. And, that first real estate programs, they were not perfect. And in fact, the first day was an utter failure and I went home in tears. And I went back and I did a reverse. And I think I grew a lot from that, but I had space, as you said, I had space to fail. I had space to grow, and just getting to dream, getting to create, that has been amazing for me. I think that when I, for those of you who have my personality type, or you are married to one, or dating one, or have a parent who is one, I think that if you know that our intention is that everybody is included, everybody is going to have the best time ever, right? That, anything, I don't want to make a decision. It's not that I'm indecisive. It's just that there's this fear of making a decision that if I make this decision and then you don't have a good time, or it's not perfect and it's not great, then you're going to blame me. And then I'm never going to do that again. And so that's the thought process that runs through our heads, and it's not necessarily healthy, but that's the goal of it, is that we really want everybody to be the best version of themselves as well. So,
and what you'll find, Courtney, is you always extend grace to everyone else. So the creative connector always makes allowances for other people's struggles, will always give them the benefit of the doubt. There's only one person in the world that they hold to impossibly high standards and never give grace or the benefit of the doubt to, and that would be the person they see in the mirror. So whenever you're leading a Courtney or a creative connector nurturer, the thing you have to understand is this: what they are exhibiting to you on the outside is not the same internal narrative, which can often be one of accusation, and you are not all you should be, because most creative connectors see a vision of the future for themselves, for their relationships, for their work, and it is perfect in here. But when it's lived out into the external world, it's always in their mind less than it could be. And if you're not careful, that can often become a very self-critical spiral. So it's really hard for people to understand that somebody is so positive and is always helping others be at their best can actually have a very, very strong tendency to internal critique and hard critique on themselves and judgment, and often reaching that place of just almost, I feel like there's nothing I can do that can ever live up to the perfectionist version of myself that I set for me that no one else does. None of that rings any bells at all, Courtney, does it? I'm sure.
Oh gosh, I'm thinking about how, what you just talked about. And then it can be a downward spiral.
Yes.
Right. Where it can become debilitating, where there's nothing I can do that's perfect enough, so I'm just not going to do anything. And it's not that I'm lazy. It's just, it's the idea of, well, it's probably going to fail anyways, so why would I even try? Or it's not as perfect as I thought it was going to be. Why even try? And I think that is a cycle that I've had to break, that it's okay. No, if that is the future that I want, I am actually going to have to be disciplined, which means maybe I need to get into that box for a moment, just for a moment, like a season. I'll get out of it. But if that's the future that I want, I have to own that I have to get up and I have to do something about it. And what are the steps? And
but while I agree with you, I would also say that the most precious gift are friends who will speak the truth in love to you often. So left to your own devices, your default is to self-critique and pain. actually those who love Courtney, and this is the difficulty, see, when you present to the world as Sportney Pioneer Connector, almost this, like I joke and say you and Susan and the gang live on the Amazon sort of island for all these, I forgot what film it was, but it was like Wonder Woman, wasn't it?
Wonder Woman.
So it's like everyone looks at you like, why would I bother encouraging you? Because you just look like superhuman. But to actually know that behind or in every creative nurturer actually is a need for affirmation, encouragement, and to keep going. So I often say that, for your type, therapy is the worst possible treatment, because therapy assumes that the truth is inside. And if we reflect with you, tell me how you're feeling, Courtney, what's going on? Where's it coming from? The problem is you internalize lies and accusation. It needs external voices who care about you to actually tell you when you're being overly critical of yourself and say, this is what I love most about you, Courtney. This is what I appreciate. This is what I see in you. This is what I'm calling up in you. Because the creative connector nurturer has a depressionary tendency, because in the end, when they start feeling, they withdraw away from the world to accuse themselves in here. And the real extreme, then if they're not careful, they find themselves being very harsh, critical, judgmental, often to the people that are closest to them. The frustration that they feel inside overboards. And then they look at themselves in the mirror again and go, it's worse than I thought. Not only am I now being an internal perfectionist, but I'm pushing away and being harsh, unfair, and judgmental on even the people I love most. So I would say there's a huge duty of care, even though you don't look like you need it. Every creative connector nurturer needs friends around them who they give permission regularly to go speak the truth in love over me. And actually, I will often ask people like you, how are you doing? Really? Underneath the veneer, underneath all the things that throw people off, I know you well enough to know, I want to know how you're really doing. I want to ask, how is that self-accusation voice? Is it loud? Is it quiet? Where are you being discouraged at the moment? Because I want you to fulfill all of the potential that is in you, because there is the creative genius that brings transformation for others. And, I know, gosh, we're nearly out of time, Courtney, but I'm excited for you for the simple reason is that, as I said to you, I think back in London a long time ago, that actually you will be better at doing what I do as Yoda than I am, because I really am the pioneer connector who has to really work hard to be present with people and to really, whereas you're wired for depth, you're wired for deep connection, you're wired for really helping people unlock what is in them. And as I've said a number of times in this interview, there's something called, Henry Nouwen wrote a book called The Wounded Healer. The things that we have been healed most from ourselves often become the context in which we become the liberating leader for others. So you might think it's been great moving from being a realtor full-time to being a course leader, doing some giant, but I almost go a year or so from now, when you're actually doing life intensives with other people, you will go, Stephen, I have found a place where my creative genius with people actually finds an outlet and hopefully an economic engine, which means you don't just have to do it for free for everyone for the rest of your life, Courtney. So any final thoughts? I mean, I'm so grateful. And I know that people really appreciate having almost like a live subject matter so they can get a chance to get under the skin of, oh my goodness, that's what it's really like to live in a creative connector nurturer. So any final thoughts from you, Courtney, before we bring it to a close?
Oh, I think I just want to encourage those who have a creative connector nurturer in their life to not to let us be us. That is one of our greatest fears, is to be known and not loved. And so that is why so many of us, I think so many of us do have that protective layer, because well, what if I'm me and they don't like me, right? That's a perfectionism tendency. And so if you recognize some of these tendencies in the people around you, people you lead, people you live with, people you're friends with, as Steve said, there's a duty of care. You will get the best version and you'll have a great time doing it. If you don't expect us to be perfect all the time. Don't expect, let us be safe, be a safe space. And that, I think, but also hold us accountable. There's we have a tendency to only want to do the fun things versus the hard things. And
That's
so
that's just you feeling you were being over positive about yourself and wanting to correct it so people didn't think you were being arrogant. So I'm like, it's not there. And the last thing for me, Courtney, is to go there is I think you gave the best example we've had in the series so far of the danger of telling somebody who they are based on what you see. And I think it's the reason why Voices is simple without being simplistic, but allowing people the time in your world. Let them take the 5 Voices assessment. Let them watch some of the video series that are deliberately free there until they come to the conclusion and go, I think this is really me underneath the oughts and shoulds. So it's a real kind of like a little challenge to all of us to go, just because you see somebody behaving, you can say, yeah, I'm totally good with you saying you're behaving like a pioneer connector. But there's a huge difference between saying you're behaving like one, and I wonder if that's really you, to say, oh, that's who you are, and therefore trying to define the nature of someone, which automatically closes down the possibility that they're now able to be the person that they were created to be. And you'll never be as full of life or alive as when you actually give yourself permission to lead as the way you're made. So Courtney, thank you for being so honest and so real. Really, really appreciate your vulnerability today and bringing up things that I was only going to do if you actually went there. Next week we have Antoine Gaines, who's a guardian pioneer. So in terms of contrast, it's probably almost a spectacular opposite. So we'll see. It may be a little more logical, rational, and reason next week. But Courtney, you've been a star. Thank you for being another amazing guest on Personality Yoda. And thank you to the millions of you around the world who have been joining in. Thanks for reaching out on LinkedIn, Facebook, finding me, telling me what's going on. And I hope you find it helpful. So much love. We'll see you next time.